and welcome to the Behavior Education Connection, the podcast that works to connect the world of behavior analysis and the world of education. We focus on topics important to behavior analysts who work in the public schools and those who support them. Join us and spend time gaining insights and ideas as our host talks with fellow behavior analysts as well as other experts in the field.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Behavior Education Connection. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden. I'm excited to be with Paige Carter today from Caroline County. Paige, tell us a little bit about you, and then we're going to delve into our topic today.
Well, sure. Thanks, Selena. I am the Director of Special Education, newly appointed this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you to that position. The other important thing to know for our podcast is that I'm also a Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and I do get to actually do some behavior consults in my role here. Our county is so small, we do not have another behavior analyst at this point. So I do get to live out that part of myself, I guess. But I started as a special education teacher and fell into teaching students with autism. And I quickly learned that I needed more. I needed to know more in order to really meet their needs. And so that's when I started exploring more into the land of ABA. You know, I graduated from college in 1987, or high school in 1987, going into college into the time of whole language and ABA is bad. Was sort of the tenor of what professors were saying to us. But I always thought as I studied, this makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that that phrase that people use, ABA is good teaching, that's just true. And then the longer I taught, the more I knew that. So, but I think as far as my role as a behavior analyst over time, I think what I learned through the courses and being able to become, you know, an autism teacher who was also a BCBA and then an autism specialist serving teachers, it's kind of a natural progression into this role as director of special ed, because this is something that I think all teachers need to at least know about and know how to reach out and get help. So anyway, that was long. Sorry.
No, not at all. It ties really nice into our topic for today. So our topic today is growing as a leader and a behavior analyst. And a lot of people in public schools get a position as a behavior analyst and don't necessarily they may or may not feel prepared to be a leader, or they are already in a school system as a teacher or some other role, and then they become a behavior analyst. And so today we're going to talk about what does it mean to be a leader within your role and how do you grow in that way. So I'm actually just going to kind of start off with that question. Okay. What does it mean to be a leader within your role?
I think when I served as in more of a behavior analyst role, and my title was autism specialist or autism coordinator in my former division. And I think that when a behavior analyst is needed in a situation, teachers are looking to you for leadership. They're looking to you for help. And I think so that the role of leader comes very natural and by necessity, I think,
right.
When you get in that position, because they're getting ready to follow you. So you're going to lead them, whether you know you're a leader or not. So I think a lot of that becoming a leader is recognizing that that's happening. And you need to step into that and lead them to better behavioral practices. So
yeah, I agree with you. And I think, you know, sometimes we get into the idea that I have to have a title to be a leader. Like I have to have a specific kind of title. And of course, you at this point are in that role, but haven't always been there, which I think is really helpful to think through. But you don't have to have a specific title to show leadership. And I think that's important for all of our behavior analysts to know. So that said, do you think that behavior analysts can be leaders in their role, and why or why not?
Well, I'm going to go one step further. I think behavior analysts in their role in public schools must be leaders, because we're, I don't want to use the word battling, but we're up against a lot of things that are counter to what we know as behavior analysts. So sometimes the discipline codes don't always match what happens with students, and function of behavior isn't always considered when we're writing a behavior plan. And even though that's built right into the process, so I think that I think we must be leaders if we're going to follow our ethics anyway, and really lead people toward those practices that we know are evidence-based. And so I think reluctant leaders can still be leaders. I think, some folks just don't want to be put in a position of that, but I think the science that's behind us really helps us be confident leaders when it comes to behavior. So.
Yeah. And you're kind of hitting on one of the things I've been thinking about is, why you say they must become leaders, but why should they be?
Well, because we're the ones with the knowledge.
Right.
We're the ones that know. And I think that, and it's our obligation to share what we know. And the one thing that I would like to say is I have a strong bias that I'm not sure if it needs to be addressed, but I really have found that working with behavior analysts who used to be teachers, who used to be special education teachers is the most, I'm losing my words, but I think that's the most important combination of folks, because if you want teachers to follow you, it's really helpful to have been in the classroom yourself, because as behavior analysts, a lot of the things we're recommending might sound clinical or might sound impossible for the classroom. You don't understand. There's 8 of them, that kind of thing. Right. And I think having been in a classroom where these practices were in place really helped me to form a lot of my interactions with teachers and become a leader, because I had been there. And so I think that behavior analysts who struggle to become leaders in schools might do so if they had not been in the classroom, or even that kind of classroom, whatever that is, themselves. And so being able to really do the work and the research to understand where that teacher is coming from as the person who is case managing and teaching likely all of these students. And so that might be something that would get in the way, but I think we have to lead folks to the behavior analytic way of being, if you will. I mean, it's so reinforcing once you start that. Once they understand, it will get better. But I think it is hard to walk into someone's classroom and tell them what to do, because it's not your classroom.
Well, and
it's not yours. And
right.
It's an adult, right? Who might be older than you,
absolutely.
Who might be more seasoned in other ways than you, who might, I don't know, but it is very, it's a precarious position to be in. I remember the first time I did a consult, and supporting a student, and it was scary. I was nervous. I had big butterflies, but by the end of the first discussion, I was like, I need to be here. She needs my help. I know stuff. I can help her. Right.
Yeah. So. And I think that's a really, really good point, is this idea of, at the end of the day, we want students to do well. We want to help students be successful.
Absolutely.
And so if they have called, they being the amorphous they, but the teacher, the administrator, whoever they are, if they have called in a behavior analyst for consultation, things are not good, probably.
Right.
So, they in theory want your help. And so being able to not take charge in a, hey, I'm taking over kind of way, but take charge in a, I'm confident and I want to work with you so that everybody can be successful kind of way. I think that's really key. So then what are some of the skills that behavior analysts need to have if they want to be a stronger leader?
Well, I think the most important thing is really good listening skills, because that first time you talk to the teacher and really hear about the student and the behaviors they're exhibiting, just really listening for what they're saying, but also what they're not saying, to be able to fill in those gaps and figure out how you can support them. People give you a lot of hints and insight into how to support them, just if you're willing to listen. We can't go in with a plan before we've listened to all of the stakeholders. The paraprofessionals in the classroom are a wealth of knowledge. They have less pretense. They're less likely to say what you might want to hear. right?
Right.
And so I think just really being able to be in conversation with all of the folks who know, even the parents who aren't necessarily in the setting, but might have some insight to what works in other settings or what really doesn't work in other settings. Being able to gather all the information that you can is really helpful. So I think just listening to folks. The other thing that I really think is important is just having a commitment to seeing this through. I'm here to help, and I'm going to do everything I can to go all, just seeing that through, but also being willing to admit if you don't know, if something is beyond you, or if a behavior really seems to have a covert function, like we don't know why this is happening, it's not apparent, and brainstorming other ways you can look at the behavior in other settings or another to try and figure it out. But I think that flexibility is also important too, because I'm thinking about the average elementary school and
Sure.
and all of the different transitions and changes. And oh my goodness, under COVID right now, there's so many things we're dealing with. But under normal circumstances, you have assemblies and bells and visitors and dogs to read to, and all of these different things that you might not have expected, right, when you go in to do an observation. So being able to be flexible and putting down that need for a more clinical setting, because that's not what a school is. So
Right. So I wholeheartily agree with you. One of the things that hit me later in my own career was this idea of, I don't have a great term for it, but respectful advocacy, right? This idea of working collaboratively, because there's a large group of stakeholders and team members that you're going to be working with in any public school. So being able to do that collaboratively, but then being able to say, well, this is my point of view and this is why, but not coming off as, but I'm the only one who's right. And that means all of you are wrong, clearly, in what you're thinking. Sometimes there is the best way to do it and the way that it's actually going to get done, and which way is the best way, the way that, the most beautiful behavior plan we could possibly write that will never be implemented, or the behavior plan that's actually going to make the change. So just my other thought on that one.
And I think that goes, I think a term I've heard principals say is I have to get buy-in from my teachers.
Absolutely.
And I think what you're talking about is buy-in a little bit. It has to be something they can swallow, because sometimes recommendations are just more than they feel like they can do. And that could be just perception, but it doesn't matter.
Or it could even be that they don't know how to do it. And as a behavior analyst, we have a role there as well, right?
Right.
That training piece and making sure people can actually implement what we're recommending.
Absolutely. And I think I made a mistake early on. I'll confess, I had a really fruitful conversation with a teacher. I thought this was really going to go great. She went to implement it tomorrow and she didn't know what to do. And we really went through the steps, but I did not make it possible for her to do it because we didn't write it down. Of course, I realized it right away, got it all written down for her, a fidelity check, if you will, sent it to her to make sure. And then we had another conversation. I modeled, we did the whole thing, but she really did go in and tried to implement it right away. And there were many things we had not done. And so that I learned that lesson. It only took once. But
well, you're doing good then.
But it was, oh my goodness, I didn't do half the things we're supposed to do today, and so I know. So I think
one trial learning is pretty good.
Exactly. Yeah. But then after that, it was fine. But I think that we have to be patient with ourselves too, because this is a process and becoming a leader is something you never stop doing, right? We're always becoming. Right. And so I think that you just have to step out and lead and hoping that someone will follow you, right? But always making sure that it's a destination we never really get to. Like you might get a position or you might find yourself in a role, but leaders need to be growing all the time or they'll lose the ability to lead.
Well, and one of the things I think a lot about when it comes to leadership is a lot of times behavior analysts get hired in roles that they don't have formal authority, so to speak, right? They don't hire these people. They really can't fire them. They may or may not be able to impact their evaluation depending on the role. And so how do you help people how do you get people to want to follow you? And for me, and I'd be interested to hear what you have to say, but for me, I always felt like it had to be the relationship then. Like, I have no formal authority, so we have to build this relationship so that you trust me and that you know I'm here to support you and that you want to follow where I want to lead to.
And I think that as you were speaking, I was like, that sounds a lot like the director of special education. I do have influence.
You have a little bit of
what I mean? A little bit. I do have a little bit of authority there, but I think that, in the school though, the principal is the leader of the school,
right.
And and that is the person who ultimately evaluates. Of course, I do have some input there, but some things and some roles, regardless of your role in leadership, you don't always have the authority you'd like to have, right? Or you certainly don't have it alone. So I can relate to that even now in so many ways. But I think you are exactly right. Building that rapport and that relationship is critical, and being able to, do what you say you're going to do and follow up and be consistent and almost over help. I ascribe to servant leadership sort of as my style of, I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I would not be or have not already done myself.
Right.
And I think that it is, that relationship is where you are going to get your buy-in, because you're here to help. And I've seen people over the years come in my classroom to help, but there was a clear thing that they could have done to help, but that wasn't what they were there for. Right. So I think sometimes going into a teacher's classroom and, developing that relationship, part of that is I'm here to help. What can I do right now? And showing up a little early and staying a little later to help with that art project, if your schedule allows. Those things are the things that build trust.
Yeah.
You truly are here to help me because you were willing to sharpen that pencil or whatever it is, that was necessary. And so I think a willingness to step out of your role, behavior analysts have a reputation, for being very like, I come in and I know what to do and I'm going to tell you and then magic will happen. And that's just not really how we know it happens, right? I wish that were true, right? But I think showing our own humility and our own, and even when we're chatting, just saying, admitting to some things that you don't know how to do and you're here to help her and you understand. And I keep saying her or him. And I don't know, but I think that goes a long way. And I think relationship is, even if you were in a position of authority, without a solid relationship, it wouldn't matter. No one would follow you. Right. It doesn't, a position will never, just that alone doesn't get you anywhere.
Absolutely. So, that kind of brings me to behavior analysts listening to this and thinking, gosh, I wish that I was a better leader, or I really want to be a good leader. What's some advice that you have for them to grow their skills in leadership?
I think I'm not sure if this is good advice, but it's what I've always done. I've always read everything I could get my hands on that made sense to me about leadership. Even a title that caught my attention, I'd read the back to see if it was something that I needed a little bit more of. And I think recognizing that becoming thing, that we always have more to learn and we always have more to grow. And I think that sets your mindset for that relationship, but it also helps you identify direction that you'd like to head in for your own personal growth. I think that this network that the state is forming is something that will help all of us, because a lot of professional development things around behavior analysis doesn't necessarily target leadership. Right. And so I think this is something that will really help. I think having a mentor that is probably just a little bit ahead of you has always helped me. I'm humbling myself on a regular basis to call other directors and behavior analysts that I know to say, here's my situation. Mm-hmm. I know you haven't seen it, but what's your first thought? Give me your gut reaction and let me process that, because I am the one here, right, seeing it.
Well, and not just one mentor, right? Like having a network to support you.
Yes. Yeah. And back in the day it was listservs, and then it was online Facebook groups and, all these different things. But anywhere you can circle with people who know behavior analysis to be able to build it up. And I think, and now that, here in the state, it certainly looks like we're heading in a direction where behavior analysis is not only embraced, but perhaps almost mandated, for schools to consider having those health professionals licensed, that way in your school. And so I think that we're going to have to create our own opportunities to grow. And my other advice is just to not, if you feel yourself getting stagnant, whatever that is, find something that interests you to spur you on again, because we are in this for the long haul. Behavior analysis is not one and done. It's a process, right? For this case or for leadership is the same way. And so I think just being willing to always find ways to grow.
Well, Paige, I can't thank you enough for being with me today. I really do appreciate it. Do you have any final thoughts about the topic before we sign off today?
No, I'm just excited that we're even talking about behavior analysts in schools. I remember when that was not a thing. So.
Me too. But we won't talk about how long ago that may have been.
No, let's not.
Well, Paige Carter, thank you so much for joining us today. Sure. And we will see you on the next episode.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Behavior Education Connection. Join us next time for another great conversation about behavior analysis in the schools. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. Sending out a special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for supporting our work. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon.